Coming up next, SPNN's Neighborhood News. Hi, I'm Sherine Onukwuwe. Welcome to SPNN's Neighborhood News. On this program, we interview district councils and we go out in the neighborhood and find out what people are talking about. St. Paul has a history of strong community and neighborhood participation. The district council system is a big part of that. There are 17 councils, each representing a different area of St. Paul. The district councils are independent organizations, but they do get some funding from the city as well as other sources like grants and donations. Much of the work being done by the councils is done by volunteers, community members, who want to participate in the life of their neighborhood and their community. On today's program, we talk with representatives from District Council 4, 12, and 15. Stay tuned. Hi, we're here with Frank Jossi from the Highland Park District Council, number 15. Hi, welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question about civic engagement in the neighborhood. How has citizen engagement, I should say, impacted how district councils work?
Well, we take a look at citizen impact on various issues, and our members are citizens too, so they have an opinion on various issues. But it allows people to at least have their voice heard. They don't always win in their opinion, but at least they get a chance to voice it before the district council, and often before people like Chris Tobert, who comes to our meetings, or his assistant, who comes more frequently. They get a chance to hear what the citizenry is thinking and their opinions of upcoming projects.
And is that pretty unique to how district councils elsewhere work?
I think in St. Paul they all work pretty much the same, and there's district councils in a few other cities. I was just in Los Angeles, and they have a district council system too that's similar to ours, although on a much bigger basis than St. Paul's. But yeah, it's ground kind of getting the opinion at the ground level for people.
So your District 15, if you could talk about what, when you think about Highland Park area, what does that represent, or how is that defined geographically, District 15?
Sure. Well, we are in the southwest part of St. Paul, and the dividing street, the border going north-south, is Randolph, and the river is the rest of the district. So as the river makes a little U-turn there, if you draw a line from Randolph to both ends of the Mississippi, you get Highland Park. And I think for a lot of people who aren't that familiar with the neighborhood, they are familiar with some of the things in it, like the University of St. Catherine, Highland Village, St. Paul Academy, Cretin-Durham Hall, the public high school, Highland Park Senior and Middle School. So we have a lot of high schools, one major university, and a really vibrant downtown village core.
Can you talk a bit about the emerging political issues regarding teardowns, tearing down houses, and how that's kind of stirring up a bit of controversy?
Sure, I think we're seeing that mainly right now in St. Paul, in McAllister, Groveland, and Highland Park, where people go into a neighborhood and they buy a smaller home, and it doesn't really function that well for their family. And on the good part, they want to live in the city. They don't want to live in Eagan or Mendota Heights. But they also want to build something bigger, and in some cases they want to build something much, much bigger than the rest of the neighborhood. And so there's been a concern among surrounding neighbors that, and they've seen it in a couple instances where the homeowner built a substantially bigger structure than the rest of the entire neighborhood. And in that situation, on the one hand, we don't want to totally tell people what they can do with their land. On the other hand, there has to be some regulation of it. And our council member for Highland and Mac Groveland, Chris Tobert, has been looking at some legislation that would kind of control how much bigger someone could build on the current lot size and put some controls in place that wouldn't necessarily disallow them from building a little bigger, but would likely make it a little more appealing and attractive to the surrounding neighbors.
Well, what are the concerns regarding teardowns? I mean, aesthetically in a neighborhood, how does it impact the neighborhood?
People say, well, it's shading our backyard. It's so much bigger. It looks way out of whack with the rest of us, and a lot of it has to do with that. I wouldn't even say some of the homes are modern, although we've had a number of interesting modern homes built recently. That seems less the problem than just the enormity of some of them. That this guy just built a house down the street that's twice as big as every house around it. You know, some of these new homes are 3,000 to 4,000 square feet, when on that block the average home might be 12 to 1,500 at the most. So you're talking about both the height's higher and the floor plate may be a little larger too.
When these different issues come up, does the district council really have the power or influence to affect change?
We'd like to think we do, and I think all district councils like to think they do. And in some cases they do, in some cases they don't. We worked with a developer of a senior housing project on Snelling Avenue that will begin soon. And he was very motivated to bring us all the plans, to talk it through. We sort of convinced him to change the color scheme a little, to work on some of the various issues involving how it's set on the street and on the property, and he agreed to most of them. Now, were the neighbors surrounding him really happy to see him move into the neighborhood? To be honest, no. But we felt that he had basically worked so closely with us, changed the plan based on some of our suggestions, and also it was zoned correctly. He wasn't violating any of the zoning code, and I think it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. And I think some of the complaints will drift away once they see the results of it. I think it's gorgeous. There's been other times where the district council years ago was opposed to something and the city decided to do it. And I won't get into that issue, but I think they made the right decision. So it's kind of, it depends. But we send our resolutions and let them know what neighbors are thinking in our community, as do the other district councils.
Mm-hmm. There is a big issue. I should not say brewing, because it's been ongoing, but the longtime Ford plant that was on Ford Parkway. What's going on with that in terms of how people are reimagining, I guess, that space, and what some people are saying they would like it to be, or that they don't want there?
Well, I'll give you a quick progress report. Right now, all the buildings are gone, and they're begun to look at what they might have environmentally, what parts are polluted, what parts have to be remediated. They're also, I think they've begun to pull up the concrete slabs, of which there are acres of them. The entire site is about 140 acres, so it's quite large. And by my guess, and most people's guess, is it might be the most valuable piece of property in the state of Minnesota right now in terms of developability. It is in a great neighborhood. It's rare that there's this much land available anywhere in a developed metropolitan area like the Twin Cities. So this is a knockout site, and right on one of the world's most famous rivers. So I guess the neighborhood, I think, is nervous. I think we're all worried about the density. This is not an uncrowded neighborhood that anybody who's driven through Highland Village at 5 o'clock most days is going to run into a traffic jam. If another 5,000 people live there, what's going to happen? So we don't know. Ford has not sold it to any developers yet. There's been several plans brewing for years, but a developer can take or leave those plans. But the city has several. There's a whole website devoted to plans for the Ford plant, everything from corporate offices to more retail to smart growth urban neighborhood to high density matched by kind of lower density housing. So all of those are on the table. A lot of studies been done of it, but it's still a mystery as to what what it's going to be.
Speaking of housing, housing can also identify a neighborhood. If you could put into words the identity of Highland Park, what would you say?
Well, that's a really great question because in many ways it was one of the first streetcar suburbs in St. Paul. So as you move south through the neighborhood, you can see representative styles architecturally of the entire 20th century of American architecture, from not so much Victorians, which you see more in Ramsey Hill and Summit Hill, but more the mid-century. You can see mid-century modern, you can see Tudors from the 1920s and 30s, you can see kind of boxy 2014 homes, you can see Georgians. I mean, it's very interesting because as the community goes south, it goes almost decade by decade. So before you hit West 7th, you're into the 1960s. You're into ranch homes. You're into all kinds of variations on 1960s architecture in that section of Upper Dennis Road and places like that, which are quite appealing. And then there's also a 100-year-old farmhouse on Davern. So there are pieces of history. The high school, too, has a historic structure in the front of it. So, but I would say that we're not as old as some of St. Paul, but we're a good representative of how the city emerged in the first part of the 20th century and on through the 50s and 60s and now.
So talk about some of the upcoming festivals in both June and July.
Sure. We have a really exciting one on Wednesday, June 25th at 7 o'clock. We're calling it, sort of jokingly, Music in the Parking Lot. It is the great jazz singer Debbie Duncan is coming with the Jazz All-Stars, and it's a great group of local musicians. They're going to play in a parking lot at the corner of Highland Parkway and Cleveland. It's the Langford Chiropractic Clinic, and they're going to have an outdoor show there for an hour and a half. And that sort of kicks off the Jazz Fest. The rest of the festival is in Lowertown in Mears Park. So we're getting a chance to be the first one to have jazz that weekend. The second one is July 6th, 8th, 17th, 18th, the Highland Fest. And if you Google it, you can pops right up. And that's our big community festival. More than 60,000 people have attended throughout the years. It includes live music every night. One of the nights there is a fireworks show. There's an art show. On Friday night, it kicks off with a wine tasting and beer tasting. And most of the festival is in the community on Ford Parkway at Hillcrest Recreational Center. Now this year it'll be a little different because the recreational center is under construction. The library is being added to there, and so things are a little bit messy, but the festival goes on, and there'll still be bands every night. There'll still be classic cars. There'll still be lots of vendors selling food, and also kind of a kiddie park with rides. So something for everything there.
How do people get involved?
In the
district council,
yeah,
and then also the festivals as well.
The festivals, well, I think they're still looking for volunteers, and I'll put in a plug for the Highland Business Association, which handles the Highland Fest. To get involved in the district council, really, it's not very difficult, and usually there's an opening. We have 3 committees. Community Services, Transportation, and Community Development. And on those committees, each of them has a minimum of 2 community members. So people, if they want to get a sense of how a community district council works, they can first just get on one of the committees and just serve as a community member. Every year there's annual elections, and it's by district, so it's actually in Highland Park is broken into a number of different districts based on where you live. So you can run in your district, and there are also at-large posts that people can run for too. So it is an election. And how you win, generally, you grab a couple neighbors and say, come in and vote for me. And if you get 5 or 6 votes, that's usually enough. Some are much more contested, some aren't contested at all. But you have to have a minimum of 2 to 3 people vote to get you into office.
Okay.
So it's a lot of fun. I mean, I encourage anybody to do it. It's a great opportunity to be involved in your community.
Great. Well, what's the website if people have more information or want more information?
They can Google Highland District Council or hdc.org. Either one should work. We just redid our website, so it looks much better, and it really goes into a lot of detail on all the issues going on in the community. So there's reports in there, there's city documents, so we've really worked hard to keep the website as up to date as possible for people looking for A, what's going on in the community, and B, if they want to dig a little deeper into various issues to find out the details, they should be on our website. They can also call Kathy Kruth, who's our executive director, and she's very helpful and will help them out in any way she can.
Thank you so much for joining us, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back. That's it for this month. Thanks for watching.